Welcome back to
Hi.
Inspiration Education.
Welcome back, as Chan would do. Rock on. This is episode 26.
26.
And we are here
Awesome.
today with Mr. and Mrs. Coffin.
Mr. and Mrs.
Mr. and Mrs. Coffin. And so this episode is for all of our colleagues out there who are either in maybe their first or second year as a teacher, or maybe you are our future colleague out there and you're considering being a teacher and you're just sort of like on the cusp, not really sure, maybe you haven't started your education yet, or maybe you're right at the end of your education and you're doing your student teaching and you're like, please Lord, let me have my own classroom right now. So this episode is for you.
Absolutely. So let's start out real quick with this. What brought you on your teacher journey?
Well, my mom was a teacher, and so growing up I was always there, early before school started, and then late after school started, and then the school ground was always like the place to be in the summer because you got to play all the games that you weren't allowed to. You were allowed to run in places that you weren't allowed to do during the school day, So I was always around that, and from a pretty young age I knew I just wanted to be like that, to be a teacher.
I actually had no intention of being a teacher at first, which is kind of funny. I think I was always drawn to the more, I think when I was in high school I imagined myself being a rock star, and not the geology rock star. It was more less actual sediment. And so, but that obviously, I mean, in a way it happened. Maybe I could be a rock star teacher, I don't know. But less guitar. So I actually ended up starting my college career in theater. Ended up transferring from that private school to the University of Arizona in creative writing, and everyone's joke there was, oh, so you're going to be a teacher. I'm like, no, I want to be a famous novelist or something. I had no novels. And so after a brief stint of pursuing acting a little bit more, I actually was brought into Desert Christian, kind of an amazingly cool divine appointment way, where I just, I needed a job, was actually out of work, walked into a school just kind of expecting, well, really just anything, could have been janitorial, I don't know. I guess I walked in right as another writing teacher was walking out, literally hours on the heels of another teacher, and
Isn't that cool?
So what I'm hearing is you can come from all walks of life to be a teacher. You can come from having been born and raised almost in that environment and know for a long time that that's what you want, and then you can also,
Gifted the opportunity out of nowhere, and there it is.
Totally.
Yeah. They're also parents of a beautiful young lady who is
almost two next month.
a toddler.
Two.
So the beautiful story here is you've been teaching. This is essentially your first second full-time year.
In my second year, yeah.
And you've been teaching
4 years. This is my second full-time year as well.
second full-time year, and they have a toddler.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So this is why we asked you guys to be here.
Yeah.
It's perfect for our story.
Yeah, so for everyone out there that's watching, what is, if there's one thing that you could say to them in terms of whether they're going to make the decision to be a teacher or not, if there was a way for them to, if you could help them to make that decision, what might that be? What words of wisdom or advice could you give to them about the calling of being a teacher? Because we all know that's probably one of the hardest jobs that there is.
Well, I mean, I like what you said. It is a calling. I mean, I don't really know anyone out there who's like sitting out there going, yeah, I want to be rich and like live on my own island and be a teacher. It's like, well, that doesn't happen. Like you obviously don't do it for the money. You have to love the kid even more than the subject. You know, like the subject is awesome. But love the kid more than the subject, and you will enjoy your life.
Yeah, I would say if you're gonna be a teacher, you definitely need to like you just said, love the kids, but want to work with kids, and be patient, kind of like we're learning with our 2-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Patience is like a growing thing.
So it sounds like one of the number one things for being a teacher is relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? You want to unpack that a little bit more?
Well, I just yesterday had a moment where I kind of I blew it with the kid. You know, like I embarrassed him in front of the class. Like it was just, I was grumpy because I was like hurting a little bit that day, which, you know, It's just like guys with like a man cold, you know, just like wow. And yeah, just like that too. And so I just, you know, I really after just really feeling bad about it and being able to, an awesome thing being married to a teacher is being able to go home to somebody and actually collaborate.
That's actually really
you know,
cool, by the way.
Which being a good teacher, you have to be able to collaborate like this. And so just kind of just talking it out with her, like, man, I really messed it up with that kid, and I didn't want to lose him because he'd been so engaged in class. And
For
so
the first time in a while.
the first thing in the morning, I just kind of like, I told the guys watching the gate, I'm like, can you send the student into me like as soon as he comes in? And just having that relationship to be able to just, I apologized to him. I was like, I messed that up. Like, that was not the way I wanted to handle that. And though the issue at hand is legitimate, my handling of it was not. I wasn't really sure what I was going to get from it, but it ended up turning into a really cool, like, you know, healing moment with him, where he just like, he's like, well, you know what, I was being a bonehead though too. And I'm like, well, regardless, like, let's just like learn to work together. And so already it was awesome. Like, you know, he came into class that day and things were just so much different. And so that's just like one story out of like a thousand, but just
what
having
an aha moment to have though as one teacher. I mean, where did you pick up on that? I mean, was that trained to you? Get that skill? Was learned, collaborative?
I think, you know, your whole life you just kind of, you're not learning to live so much as you are learning how to die, you know? And like that's the moment as a teacher. Like, I mean, how easy would it be for me to just kind of go into a classroom and be like, I'm the head honcho here and my way goes, you know? Because I could. I'm older than them. I've got more knowledge than them. I've got seniority. It's actually been given to me. Like, I could be the king of my own little kingdom. And so I think it just takes a lot of the experience of like the total lack of joy and unhappiness that comes with being the king of your own little kingdom to bring you to that place, where you realize like it's not about me, it's about these students. It's not about my agenda, it's about the learning objective and
letting go of control.
Which,
so that's self-corrective, hopefully, for most people, you know.
And being willing to share and collaborate with your students is oftentimes the exact opposite of what I think new teachers are taught in their college curriculum, which is be the head honcho and put on your angry face and don't smile until Christmas.
Be the expert in your subject, and no one, you know, you can't be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, because pick up on the themes already. Know your kids, love your kids, love them more than your content, and then collaborate with other people, whether it's fellow teachers or like in this case you have the beautiful thing where you can collaborate at home. Reflect, learn, move on.
So, Kaylin, I have a question for you. What's a hardship, if you're speaking to other teachers out there, what's a hardship that you encountered and how did you overcome that? Like, what's a way that you can help those teachers out there that are brand new, something that they might encounter, and how did you overcome it?
That's good.
I think, especially being a new teacher, the temptation is to like tackle it all at one time and do everything at one time and like go and be like, I'm a new teacher, I have like all this new information, I'm so excited, and you're like, you know, you're hyped on adrenaline, you go into the classroom and the first week you're like on it. But then after a while, it starts to take a toll on you. And I feel like my first year, I definitely did that, where I ran like super hard and wanted to, you know, do all the cross-disciplinary things, and I wanted to have everything be cooperative learning and all my PowerPoints and all, you know, all the fancy stuff. Right. And you burn out real fast. And I think what helped, well, what you've said a lot to me is like, hey, it's, you know, you have a long weekend this weekend, go home and be a mom, don't worry about work. Self-care. And I came home and told Jake, I was like, guess what Meg just told me? Work less. You know, work less? That just like, it blew my mind, because like coming here, like I had never been told that before in the past 2 years of teaching. And so that it's okay to not have it all, you know, at one time, but that take it day by day and, you know, focus on one area and do that well, and eventually like as you collaborate, like lean on people, because I've been able to go home to him and be like, man, I'm really struggling in this, and he throws an idea at me. I was like, that's just what I needed, or come and talk to you, or you know, and everyone is able to lend a hand, and together we carry the kids. Not I have to carry the kids this whole time by myself. It's like all of us as teachers doing it together.
Now, I just now remember what sparked the idea for this episode. Cassie and I did a professional development for our entire teaching staff, and we used one of our vlog episodes. that night you guys collaborated at home
That's
after
right,
that
yeah.
PD,
Yeah.
and you implemented something the very next day, and you rocked it, right?
Yeah.
You tried something new.
What did
Right?
I don't
It
even.
was the coaching.
Oh,
It was the reading and the you had
Yeah,
the coach
yeah,
and
yeah.
the student and the discussion questions.
yeah, I kind of did it to where the kids, where I had been in charge of generating the questions
For
from
what
the
class?
literature
Yeah.
for reading, and instead I was like, well, what if they did it? And I just let them do it, like to find their own little corner, and they asked
He teaches middle
themselves.
schoolers, FYI, which is a whole different beast, right? Okay.
Oh,
all right.
yeah, it
Let me
is.
give that small.
Speaking of callings.
Emphasis on the beast, right? Yeah. So it was awesome. It was cool.
Yeah.
Like I just needed that kickstart to be like, oh, just to forcing yourself to think about it
Your
differently.
To let
kids-
go of control.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
Let
think
them-
you said, I'm probably paraphrasing, but your kids never learn so much with you talking the least.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Right.
I think, yeah. That's awesome.
Well, and then we had a moment because you were talking about not having to work so hard going home
Right.
and not having to work so hard. And then you tried something new in your class with giving your students the ability to
Run the
take
class,
control of the
yeah.
class.
Mm-hmm.
And have you found that you're doing a little less now and
Oh
you
my
can
gosh.
go home? And,
Yes, like, so just having a driving question, which is what you kind of prompted me to do, like, okay, what are the objectives you're trying to get them to learn, and what are the standards? And I was like, that's a great question. Went back and got the standards, and then formulated a question and gave it to my math apps class, and that one question, then I've had target questions for each day. Like today we're tackling this part of
Good.
the
Awesome.
question. Today we're tackling this part, and we're on day 10 of that one question, and
Wow.
these kids have taken off with that project, and it has become more than I even imagined. But they are so invested in it, and they love it, and I get to sit back and just guide them and say,
Yep.
hey, what do you think about this, and come up with the questions for each day. And just
There's
talk
nothing
about-
like
yeah.
just being able to float around and just
It's
check on them,
amazing.
and
Really cool.
now
Yeah.
you are actually facilitating the learning.
Yeah, and
You're
they're
not-
learning so much better that
Right.
way, and it's taking the weight off of me to go home and go, oh, I have to plan every single minute, because they're so invested in it and they're learning.
Right.
Yeah, instead of me just going, "Meh, meh, meh, meh," you know, like, yeah. So,
What drives you in teaching? What drives you?
I like the community, just the idea of getting to see kids, kind of what we were talking about before, like start, high school or K4, wherever you're starting to teach, but seeing them learn all these things that they didn't know before and get excited about it, and then they own it for themselves, and feeling like you're really teaching them to go do it on their own and giving them tools that they're actually going to use, like we could teach all these if-then scenarios, but teaching them things that they really need to learn and that give them the tools to succeed outside. And then later seeing them as they've graduated and being like, oh my gosh,
Yep.
like you learned something in my class
Yeah.
and you're doing so well,
Yeah.
Just wait till they start coming back and letting you
Yeah.
know that.
Mm.
It's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
I think even just it's kind of a simple answer, but even just recognizing the gravity of the situation that you're a part of. Like, you're sitting in a room full of the next generation that's going to start doing your job, potentially, doing the president's job.
Describe what it's like, because you both have a number of years. You're new on the scene, but have had enough experience that you can talk about what it's like to be the first day as a teacher, and then the first year, and then the second year. What's that progression like?
Oh man. First day is so much adrenaline and so much preparation. Every
Yeah.
summer I get to, I'm like, man, I just wish school would start, because I feel like if I could just start and get with the kids, then I would know exactly where I want
Right.
to go and get the motion of it. But all the planning and all that leading up to it, it gets crazy. Like, to be honest, it can be super stressful sometimes, but
And she had been teaching before I came into teaching. And so, like, even watching her, I wasn't really fully aware. I remember the first day of school, it was like a Tuesday or something for us that year. And I remember like sitting there and like having had these all these parent meetings and getting things ready. And she calls me and she's like, when are you gonna be home? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, it's 8:30 at night. And I had been there at 7:30, and I realized, I was like, oh my goodness. So I went home and I was like, it could never stop.
yeah.
Like the amount of work that's there, I could sit there
Yep.
and just work, and I would never run out of
Yeah.
anything that I need to do, and that
Yeah.
freaked me out at first. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, I don't understand. How are you supposed to have a life? And so since then, thankfully, the progression has just been like what you said. There just does need to come a point where you just go, it's done. I've done what I need to do today. And just being able to just...
Because we could get so wrapped up in that we forget to be present.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
I
absolutely.
find I
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
do that all the time. I'm like, I have to be better. I have to do this. I have to walk the talk that I'm this teacher,
Right.
trainer, whatever. I'm like,
Right.
whoa. I just missed a moment with that kid. I just missed a moment with that
Right.
with that person I'm
Right.
mentoring or whatever. And so yeah, you gotta be present.
Oh yeah.
And that's why the self-care piece is so important.
Yeah.
Because you can't be there for each other or for your daughter or much less your
Right.
kids if you're not taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But talk about the learning curve and the growth that you do in terms of being a better teacher as the years go on.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, I could talk about my first year in comparison to today, and it's ugly.
That laugh. The laugh of known failures.
Yeah, so remember this vlog part of the vision of our vlog is professional development. So that's
Yeah.
a great question. So yeah, talk about that process.
Well, I mentioned it a little before. Like, I think, collaboration with teachers is important. PD obviously is incredibly important, but I personally almost learn more from my failing a gazillion times. Like failing with a student, like, wow, I really just botched that relational part of it. Or a lesson where you go into a lesson like, this is going to be awesome, and you like plan so well for this one plan, and you get in there and it's really bombing, and then you got to like tank that lesson in the moment and then try and almost feels like glorified babysitting, like looking at the clock, and you're like, oh, what else can I do for the next 35 minutes? This is not working. And so there's just...
I've never been there.
Right. So for me, it's
Liar.
just been growing comfortable with repeated failures and not bashing yourself and being like, I'm never going to teach again, even though some days, I'll be honest, you do walk away feeling like, I'm a terrible teacher. Oh my goodness, if she had a nickel for every time she's heard me say, I'm a terrible teacher, and she's kind of talked me off that ledge, I think that just coming to that ledge and coming off it over and over and over again has been one of my greatest mentors.
If there is one survival strategy that you could give, like just one, like, God, please don't go into teaching and not do this, or you should do this.
You should drink coffee.
Amen, sister.
That was the first thing that popped in my head.
Self-care. We also go to bed earlier than we always joke. We're like, we're such old people. My brother's, had his baby, his third baby the other day, and he calls, and like wakes me up, and I'm like, no, what? He goes, did I wake you up?
It was 9 o'clock.
It's 9 o'clock. But yeah, self-care, just getting the sleep, and I think like she's so right. Just keeping things, like, even if you think it failed, it might have like failed for that group of kids, but just like keeping things, even if it's just a hard drive, a journal, or just that reflection. And that also, I think, observation, like, peer observation, like going into somebody else's classroom.
That's good.
It's so helpful because it's always just helpful for me to even just to see the reality is somebody does something better than you. I mean, no matter who
We
you
steal
are,
from each other
right?
all
Like,
the time.
there is something that someone does better than you. I slaved, something hours on this rubric that ended up being like mediocre, and I could have just walked like 2 doors down, saw the same rubric, public speaking rubric from a peer of mine that was just exquisite, and I was like, would you have let me use that? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So yeah, just utilize the people around you.
For me, I think probably the biggest thing would be just like what you had said earlier, the content is important, but never ever miss an opportunity to build a relationship with your students.
Yeah.
If you don't build a relationship with your students, you will not have their buy-in, and they're not going to learn much
In
from
one
you
ear,
at
out the
all.
other. Yeah.
What about for you as a veteran teacher?
I had that piece from the get-go, was the relationship with kids, but I spent way too much of my career, probably almost half of it, as a silo. I thought I had it all together, or I had to do it alone. That's what I was supposed to do, and I didn't really know or understand the idea of the power of collaboration.
Hmm.
So I've really, in the second half of my career, I've really come into my own in that. And I would say I'm still learning from that. But just the fact that I need people, and that was a personal thing and a professional thing that I really had to reconcile in my life. And once I realized the power of that, I can't imagine doing this.
How did I do it before?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And being able to be so much far more effective, and then being able to pass it on, pay it forward both. So yeah.
You know, another survival technique that I was thinking of that actually relates to what you're saying is having a driving question. There's, even if you have a block class where it's an hour and a half long, if you have a big question that you want your kids to wrestle with, and generally speaking, those kinds of questions don't have an answer, you can get in, you only need this much content. And then, if, this is assuming you created a safe environment in your classroom where your kids feel comfortable to be able to dialogue and that kind of thing. The rest of your class is filled with such meaningful and deep understanding, and being able to hear what other people have to say and actually
So
having
important.
a conversation is so important these days.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're feeling like you're getting tired, you're burnt out, what am I going to do for tomorrow? I have to prep another class.
Are you trying too hard?
You're trying too hard. Exactly.
Still
Stop
doing
it.
it.
Yeah.
Stop trying so hard. Think about whatever your content is. Think about some question that you want them to try to wrestle with, and ask the question and let them go. Let them go. You'll do such little actual teaching, and just like you were saying, so much more learning.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's good.
Let the kids teach themselves.
Yeah. Their
With your
process.
guidance, of course.
And they learn more
Yeah.
when they teach themselves, because they discover it themselves.
Exactly.
It's like trying to work out for them. Just like, yeah, come on.
What do you need from your mentors?
Reflection time, or just time to ask questions, or having someone that you can go to and ask those questions.
And not feeling like those questions are dumb.
Right. But having someone, I would say, especially for first year teachers, that's critical, to find someone and be like, hey, can we have an open door where I can come and ask you questions, because I don't know anything, and, or I don't know what you know, and, and making time, because the thing is, you can set it up at the beginning, but if you don't follow through with it or set an appointment, then you lose that chance for a relationship, and that chance for collaboration and everything that comes with it, and how it impacts your classroom. So.
When I was first here, I didn't really even know anyone, and one of the best things that my administrator did for me was, I mean, if you're not sure who to collaborate with, you can go to your administrator and just ask him who would be a good mentor for me. In which case, at this time, I didn't even know to ask that. I was so green, it was ridiculous. And my administrator said, "You're gonna work with this gentleman," and I still, to this day, work with him, and it's awesome because of that set aside. Like, this is an understanding. We actually do have a mentor-mentee relationship. I can go knock on his door anytime, and I do. I probably drive him crazy. But.
So that is a very legitimate survival technique for new teachers, is to find a buddy.
Totally.
System. Stick together.
Find a buddy.
No man gets left behind.
Dare I say that finding a buddy is important for us who have been doing
Find
it
a
for
buddy.
a while.
Found mine. Yeah. All my middle schoolers.
Yeah, but seriously, I haven't felt like I have flourished as much as when I've had a collaboration
Absolutely.
where we're bugging each other all the time, right? Driving each other crazy, whatever, right?
At the end of the day, why should someone be a teacher?
Not to put it too lightly, but you care about the future of the world. I mean,
I'd say if you're passionate about the area that you went to college for, or that you love, if there's something that you love, I feel like if you love it enough, then most of the time you want to share it with other people, and
bringing
that
that
way,
joy to it.
and that way, exactly, and that way to share it is to teach, because then you get to take that fire that's inside of you, and you get to give it to them and see that fire birth in them, and
Absolutely.
So to wrap up some of the things that you've heard today from our teachers who are sort of new on the scene, I would say one of the big things that they would say for survival as a new teacher is to find a buddy, to buddy up, and to collaborate, to build relationships with your students.
Have self-care.
Have
Yes.
self-care.
Marry another teacher. That's optional.
Could do that too.
It's optional. It's a good option though.
Well, thanks for taking the time to do this today.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Fantastic.
you guys. Totally.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Do we want to do the ceremonial? Or is that not?